Many of us, by the way, we could have gone to the commission and we didn't. This was called a political prison and torture. I didn't go and testify, and I have a lot of friends who didn't either because of, well, maybe we should have actually. But the interesting was that people that were very famous in Chile, people in sports, in the media, said, yes, I was tortured. And that uncovered a reality that Chileans in the 2004, 2005 had not envisioned as they were. So the new generations began to find out what had happened. And I think economic growth and inclusion, social change has been, as I mentioned before, so important. Should we be satisfied? By no means. We would have a lot more things to do. But then the new generations want change. You know, they feel that, okay, so you've done all these wonderful things. What are your proposals for the future? And in the young people in Chile, there is a sense of frustration on one side. These are, many of them, the children of the success of democracy with social justice. But they demand more because they didn't live the repression, so they cannot be inspired by the fight against the dictatorship. They have to be inspired about other things. And there is a challenge that the Concertación, the coalition government, the coalition that supports the government has. And Chileans have changed very dramatically. You know, there's a value change, very profound among young people in Chile.
Backsliding may have been too strong a word, but you were telling us at dinner about problems with people registering, as you have to make a special effort. Yeah. Young people being engaged in the process, I guess, is what I'm wondering.
Yeah, well, I think they are engaged, but in different modalities than merely politics. I mean, many of them are engaged in music, in the arts, in creative processes, in filming, in all walks of life, or even mobilizing as a citizens movement that put a challenge to President Bachelet at the beginning, the young high school students that began demanding, at the beginning was just an ID that should be for free, and that's how it was a whole complication. And then they began asking for quality education, and so there is participation, but not necessarily in the traditional political ways. But the problem with Chile is that we have an electoral system that in order for you to vote, you have to register. If you register, you are obliged to vote. So that participation in Chile, given that it's mandatory for those that are registered, is above 90%. But the problem is that we have an aging pool of voters, right, because not very many young people are registering to vote. Because, first of all, there are a lot of impediments to vote. I mean, it's not easy. The offices are open during certain months. Like, for example, today, if a young person over 18 wanted to vote, and he was not registered, he couldn't because the registries have been closed. The elections are on the 13th of December. So there is a problem here about how to enchant, I would say, young people into participating in politics and at least to do their civic duty to vote. And part of the problem is because when democracy works, well, it is a bit boring. I think there was that saying that, well, pity the country that has no heroes, and somebody that answered, well, the problem is when you need to have heroes. Sometimes you need to have heroes because you're in a very particular moment of life. Life, however, is not always that way, cannot be that way. And young people are often inspired when they feel that there are challenges ahead. Today there are not those Homeric challenges of 20-some years ago. And that's, I think, part of the challenge on how to mobilize, how to inspire young people that are nevertheless are interested, because last time that I was with my wife in Chile, we went to see a documentary in Allende that I wanted to see for quite a while, and they were showing it at a small theater. And we went there, and we were the only people above 30 that were there. All young people. And I was really surprised about how they were interested about a piece of history that they weren't even thinking about being born, and nevertheless they were there. So it's an interesting phenomenon, and it may be dramatically seen in this election, but however, it will not come with a lot of young people that should be there to say their thing.
Thank you.
One more question?
Right? Yeah.
Thanks. I read recently there's a compendium of CIA documents that were declassified about the Pinochet period and put together in a book. And one of the ones that interested me was the fact that Pinochet seemed generally fearful that a war would break out between Chile and Peru, and that Peru would have the benefit of the weapons that they were getting still at that time from the USSR, because they were still nominally friendly countries. How realistic do you think this was, this paranoia of his?
Well, first, there was these documents that were released. They were released in 2000. I was deputy foreign minister then, and I was the one who received the boxes and boxes and boxes of documents. That was in the context of the request that had been made following the Pinochet's detention in London, requested by the Spanish and human rights organizations. So that was very useful, and it was put in a book by Peter Kornblum, the Pinochet Files. And well, there are a lot of documents there, but your question is a thorny one, and it has to do with relations with a neighboring country. So I don't know how Pinochet felt at that time, but I think those documents were mostly illuminating about the role that the U.S. had played that was much deeper than thought, including, the complete conversations between then Henry Kissinger, when he went as Secretary of State to an OAS meeting in Chile in 1976, and Pinochet, because only parts of it had come out, and several other documents that before we had known in a highly redacted way and that were fully revealed. So I think it said a lot more about the U.S. role than about bilateral issues in Chile. Thank you very much.
Do you want to do these and show me one? We're going to for the signing. You ready? Okay. All right. Well,